Hi guys, welcome to the PiG Daily, episode number 102, and today we're going to be looking at how to defend Cyclone Hellion shenaniganery. Recently in IEM Gyeonggi, we had a whole lot of chaos with Innovation just showing some insane Hellion Cyclone builds. Of course, Innovation did end up winning the tournament. He absolutely crushed it. He was a real boss. So let me just turn that game sound down nice and low. So he just kind of destroyed everything, and he was doing this every single ZvT. He was going for 2 factories very fast, so standard expansion into a fast factory off gas first, then he'd go for the second gas in the second factory, and he'd pump out 6 Hellions and 2 Cyclones, and he'd have this really great timing at about 4 minutes 30, where he hits the Zerg with 6 Hellions and his first 2 Cyclones. We can see this is a longer map, might be slightly delayed here, but we do see, the first 2 Cyclones. They're going to get over there about 4 minutes 45 in this game. A lot of Zergs, a lot of Terrans have been doing this on ladder now. A lot of them have been struggling pretty hard, so this is just going to be a quick daily, looking at the ins and outs of it, and the most common way to defend it, which is Roach Ravager, which we're going to see from Dark here, as well as another way you can try and defend it. So this game I'm starting with is actually the textbook defense. There's a lot of games I've seen on ladder, I've seen with other players, as well as myself, where you just don't quite have enough units, and these Cyclones and Hellions just spiral out of control, and everything just becomes insane. You can see here, Queens are dying, Roaches are dying, Ravagers are dying. It's so close to being at that point, but just enough Roaches end up popping out in time. Dark holds it and ends up in a pretty decent spot. You can see, he's very carefully biding his time, making sure he's morphing low hit point, roaches into Ravagers, defends it actually perfectly. This was the perfect defense. And he's going to counterattack with Roach Ravager, but he's droning behind that, adding a lair. And he's not building Zerglings with this because they won't really do anything against the Hellions and Hellbats. And this ensures that the Terran is constantly producing Cyclones and Hellions rather than going up to more valuable siege tanks. And it can also allow you notice here, just spreading Corrosive Biles and constantly, you never really just commit to a fight, you always move in and out once you get a decent amount of Ravagers. And there we go, 8 SCVs picked off, can just pull back now. Double Evo's going down, lair. Great, that's a perfect hold. Yay! Alright, so, let's just look at the details of exactly what allows Dark to defend so well. If we go back earlier into the game, you can see from about 4 minutes exactly what's taking shape. Now, I really don't care. Everyone has their own preference in how they open in TVZ. I'm not going to say, in ZvT, I'm not going to say you need to go and follow a different build order to defend this. Like, to be safe against this, you need to change your entire build order. You always want to avoid making adjustments like that. The moment you change your entire playstyle because of the threat of one sort of rush, it's like, are you playing StarCraft, or are you just kind of trying to blindly counter that one popular thing in the meta, and then your build kind of sucks a week from now when everyone stops doing it? We don't want to end up in that situation. You want to end up just playing your normal build. Now, in this case, Dark opens up with quite a late third base. He's actually gone Overlord speed. He wanted to have full vision of what's going on. Of course, this has its ups and downs. Even if you don't scout this coming, if you just see Hellions, you can still be ready for this build and react through, scouting with slow Overlords and other things. But this way, Dark's going to see everything. The downside is, this means his third is super delayed. He actually also misplaced it, so he had to cancel it and replace it. So this is not like a pristine opening by any means. And he's only been mining with one guy on gas after he started Overlord speed. He pulled the other 2 off. So notice as soon as he scouts that, he's dropping a Roach Warren, because it needs to be ready and hopefully finished by about 4 minutes 15 or 4 minutes 20. Because remember what I said, at 4 minutes 30, 6 Hellions and 2 Cyclones can be there. You really want to have some Roaches and Ravagers out to back up your Queens for that. So I think ideally you actually want to drop your Roach Warren, considering it takes, 39 seconds. You want to drop your Roach Warren probably at about 3 minutes 30, latest 3 minutes 40. You really would rather have that up, especially if you're playing a smaller map like Habitation Station, Overgrowth, any of those maps. You really want to just make sure you're a little bit over prepared. On a big map like Varney, you can get away with being slightly later on your defense. So if you're someone, who's playing, say you're playing at diamond level, keep in mind, most of your players aren't going to hit this nearly as crisply as Innovation. So you guys can always make an adjustment and say, well, if Dark needs to be ready at 4 minutes 30 every game, if I'm ready at 4 minutes 45 every game, say 15 seconds later, I should be pretty much completely fine. Most Grandmaster players aren't going to hit anything close to the time that Innovation hits. If I'm in Diamond League, I definitely don't need to be that safe. Likewise, you know, kind of the bigger gap between your league and the pro players, the bigger you can give yourself a bit of extra leeway. Because if you try to rush things out at the exact same time that Dark does, keep in mind you haven't been building drones as frequently early in the game, your macro is not as good. So you've always got to adjust your reaction to your skill level. So we use the pro benchmark as, okay, this is a perfectly executed build. So we know, you know, the fastest it can come, but you then want to adjust that to how fast it actually comes when it's hitting you on ladder. You don't want to just blindly play overly safe because you don't have the macro to back it up. So, biggest thing here though is the gases. Get that Roach Warren down, preferably by about 3 minutes 40 at the latest. But you're going to notice here, Dark puts 3 guys back on gas, takes a second gas, a third gas, and a fourth gas. Now, in some of his games, he does only take 3 gases. But this game, he takes 4, 1 or 2 of the other ones, he goes for 4 gases. And this just allows him to make a lot of roaches, a lot of ravages. And really getting that ravager count up is what completely shuts down the push. Once he gets to about 7 or 8 ravages, the Hellions and Cyclones just can't push in very well. So this gas income, because he hasn't, you're not saving up gas from the early game for this. You're trying to build your hatcheries, your drone count. That's going to be really big. So 2 bases saturated on minerals and 4 gases is a pretty good drone count. Now, if you want to be a little bit safer, if people are hitting this crisp and hard, you just go for 3 gases. That's going to be, you know, a few less drones. You've got anywhere between 39 and 42 drones is where Dark ends up stopping every single game to stop this push. Excuse me. All right. So we can see here the micro as well. Now, if you don't have great micro, if you find you don't have enough units, just play that little bit safer. Like I said, only play 3 gas. Maybe don't even fully saturate one of your mineral lines. You can basically just go, all right, let's have like 13 drones in my main or 13 drones in my natural rather than the full 15 or 16, right? Once it comes though, you got to focus on your micro. Try to get the most out of your units. So you do want to just kind of engage and you want to keep pulling back weakened units and then morph into ravages, any low hit point roaches. We see here once again, he's trying to pull back the weakened unit, morphs to a ravager. Tries to pull back that roach, doesn't quite save it in time. And just trying to pull back these units a little bit here and there. Trying to buy time for more stuff to come out. Of course, these roaches, really good at absorbing Hellbat damage, really good at dishing out damage to Hellbats. Kind of shit against the Cyclones. The Cyclones, when they can just stand there shooting your roaches, it gets a bit scary. That's why Corrosive Bile is great. Corrosive Bile, just you spread it out on their units, it forces them to constantly move rather than shooting. And you just keep dancing back and forth. And once you have enough units where you feel you can just overwhelm, you notice that Dark ignored the Hellbat there because there was only one. Tried to move right on top of the Cyclones and focus fire them. If there's a lot of Hellbats, you don't want to do that maneuver because obviously you're going to eat way too much Hellbat splash damage. You're going to walk into the flames and just get roasted. Now, from here, there was a game on Overgrowth, which Dark played, where he masked Zerglings, just stayed on this drone count and just tried to kill with endless Ravages being morphed off these roaches, and just Zerglings. The problem was, Innovation didn't just let all his Hellions bleed out. Because he didn't bleed out all of his Hellions, he just kind of never gave an opportunity for the Zerglings to close in. When they did finally close in, the Hellbats just roasted the shit out of them and they did nothing. So I much prefer, if you want to do a counter pressure, make sure your opponent's not being greedy, maybe get some damage done, who knows, maybe even just kill them. This is a good choice. Just go across the map with your, you know, what is this? Total of 17 roaches. It's morphed 8 of them into Ravages. So it's 9 roaches, 8 Ravages. And this is a good way to put pressure on, potentially do damage, but just notice this micro, spreading out those corrosive biles. And then he's going to move back, shoot, move back, shoot. And then at a certain point he says, oh, it's too dangerous because I'm not reinforcing. I've been droning behind this. I need to pull back because if I get overwhelmed by the Hellion Cyclone, they'll just dive across the map and kill me. And from here, just does the standard anti-mech stuff. Goes for a lair, will head for a hive very quickly, goes for double ranged upgrades, roach speed, drop a Hydralisk den as well, and just goes for Roach Hydra Viper, which is your general answer to mech. So this is your textbook defense here. Really well played. He does the same thing on Habitation Station. We saw in some of his games, Dark did mistime it. This is something where it might take a little bit of practice for you guys to get used to it. Even in game 1 of this set, Dark actually lost all 3 of his queens at the front. It was like, oh shit, it was looking really bad. But then a bunch of Zerglings and Roaches popped out right at the perfect time, and they actually surrounded the Hellions and Cyclones on creep. So he killed almost all of Innovation's units, and it worked out because of that. But as I said, that was also the game where he then was like, yeah, I can just kill you, Ravager Zergling. And he actually ended up a little bit behind because of that. because of that. So anyway, guys, I am also going to talk about one other alternate way of defending. Something which requires not as much gas and is a bit more efficient, especially if you're not confident with your Ravager micro and pulling your Roaches back. This is, in some ways, an easier way to defend, and this is defending with Queenling Bane. Now, I really wanted to talk about this because every single person was kind of saying on the Reddit thread, on the live report threads on Team Liquid after the series. Well, this was game 5, right? So, you know, spoilers, doesn't really matter. This tournament was like 2 weeks ago. Dark loses in this game 5 because he goes Queen, Zergling, Baneling this time against the exact same opening from Innovation, 2 Factory, and he's just not ready, and he just gets overwhelmed and killed. And everyone's saying, oh man, Dark just threw this game by trying to go Banelings against this. You can't go Banelings versus Mech. You can't go Banelings versus Hellbat Cyclone. What an idiot. I can't believe Dark threw the game. This was so disappointing. Why wouldn't he just go Roach Ravager again? Keep in mind, the Roach Ravager, the only game where he really ended up convincingly in what looked like a great spot was that Varney game. And even there, that was an incredibly close game on Varney, where he like lost multiple bases. He was struggling to hold back the mech, and then finally he got like the sick blinding clouds and abducts that he needed and won the game. So I actually really love the idea of just going really heavy on queens and defending that way. But you've got to be ready with Banelings against the Hellbats. If you don't have Banelings ready when those Hellbats morph and come in, you are going to be in trouble. Now, we see here exact same build. Darkseas, exact same build. Once again, keep in mind, he's opened up with Overlord speed. And that's all well and good, right? Overlord speed, yay, you've got vision. Remember what I was talking about? When you go Overlord speed, it costs a lot of money. That takes a lot away from your early build-up. Your third's much later. You don't have a crazy amount of drones. So you're going for the less robust, I guess, I don't know, I don't want to call it less robust, but you're going for the Queen defense, and then suddenly you're just like, wait a second, let's counterattack with Zerglings. Okay, cool, we saw that was a good move. He did this on a few of his games where counterattacking on Habitation Station with a small number of Zerglings as the Hellion Cyclone is a fantastic move. Sometimes they get in and kill a lot of SAVs. A lot of the time, they slow down Innovation from just rallying straight across the map. And it pulls Innovation's attention away from the front, which can buy time. However, Dark gets way too greedy here. Look at this. He's like, yeah, I'm just going to morph Baneling drops. What the hell, man? You need to focus on defending the front. We've seen in those previous games, this is not a super long-term strategy for Innovation. Keep in mind, his third command center is very delayed. We saw in those previous games, Dark was holding and he was only on 40 drones. He didn't even really have a worker lead in any of the games, but it was okay. The reason he was ahead is because there's just 2 factories. There's no armory upgrading weapons for quite a while. The third command center's late. This is a big commitment from Innovation. And this is something where if you don't respect it, it will spiral out of control hard. So you don't need to focus on doing counterattack damage against this. Poking with a few Zerglings at the natural is great, but the last thing you want to be doing is both droning greedily and trying to do counterattacks at the same time. And that's exactly what Dark does here and why he screws up his defense. These Banelings should be morphing on the defense. I talked about how 4 minutes 30 is when they can have 6 Hellions and 2 Cyclones. Well, guess what? 5 minutes 10, we've got 8 Hellbats and 4 Cyclones. And all we have from Dark here is 7 Queens. Yes, he's got 3 more Queens on the way, which is what you need to do with this sort of defense. But no Banelings to stop the Hellbats coming forward is the problem. So what we're going to see here is Dark has to try to run with his Queens, and he's just taking free damage. He's already wasted a transfuse. Now his Queens are all clumped up. He's taking more free damage. Just wasted another transfuse. He's not dealing damage this whole time. Now his Queens are all clumped up. A few Banelings finally come in. They get some good connections, but once again, he's running with Queens. Queens are such a slow unit, you can't afford to be running away with them constantly. And now he's lost all of his Queens. They've been clumped up way too often, which has allowed the Hellbats to do great splash damage. And it looks like, oh my god, Ling Bane Queen can't defend this, right? No, not at all. I think that's completely wrong. Killed 8 SCVs in the main, but he's dead. So let's talk about why queens are good and then why this defense doesn't work. Queens are fucking amazing, guys. Especially if you go something... There's actually a build where you rush Carapace even, and that's amazing. Now, why is this so amazing? It's because Cyclones do only 3 damage a shot to non-armored units, as we can see down there in our bottom right. Minus 1 armor. Base armor on the Queen. Wait, so they're only doing 2 damage a shot? If you get +1 armor, you can even make that 1 damage a shot. The Cyclone's doing 1/3 of its regular versus light damage. That's insane. That's a crazy reduction. So already Queens just absorb Cyclone hits. They don't give a shit. Ravagers do a good job as well. Roaches, on the other hand, just get shredded by them. So if you go for Queens as the core of your defense, you're really mitigating the damage of those Cyclones. And they just can't get through your Queens, especially when you've got Transfuses, as long as you can stand there and actually fight them. And you're not just running away, letting them get hits on you for free. The problem, of course, with Queens is Hellions and Hellbats. You can't just go, oh, here comes some Hellions, build 8 Queens out of my available lava. You can't do that. Queens are a very slow building unit. They take a long time to get out. So because they take so long to build, you kind of have to build your Queens in preparation, and you 100% need to use Banelings to help protect them. The Banelings stop the Hellbats from closing in. If the Hellions stay in Hellion form, that's fine. Your Queens can just fight Hellion Cyclone. That's easy. But the moment they turn into Hellbats, they're so meaty, and they do so much splash damage that it gets really scary, because if you don't have Banelings, they just get on top of your Queens can't out DPS them, and you get screwed over. The moment you have Banelings, you can kind of maintain a concave. I'll show you guys what I mean. So basically, ideally, at this exact moment where this push is happening, you want to have at least 5 Banelings there, preferably a few more, because you know this is 2 factory stuff. And these Queens, the only way you want to micro them is you want to have them spread in a concave. So this is not really completely ideal from Dark, but it's pretty good. It's a battle line. It's not bad. So what he'd do is he would basically individually click back these Queens the way I'm doing it there as they take damage. And you kind of keep pulling them back in a little bit of a spread so that they maintain this nice big sort of banana concave shape. And that means they're all able to fire on this one ball of Terran units coming in, while also negating any splash damage from the Hellbats. Now, if the Hellbats try to clump up and just dive on top of the Queens, your Banelings come forward and blow up the Hellbats, or at the very least force them to spread and pull back. And if you do that and you actually stand and fight, you whittle through these units very quickly. Now remember what we talked about here. They're moving, they're not fighting, there's nothing to kill the Hellbats. They're taking damage, they're wasting transfuses. Not only that, they've lost position. And this is the most important thing with any Queen defense against any Hellbat attack. You lose that concave, suddenly you can't turn and fight, because if you turn and fight, you're blocking these Queens at the front from retreating. Because you're clumped up, the Hellbats will be hitting multiple Queens with every shot. You're just in a very bad position. So even though he turns around there and fires, once again, he can't pull these weak Queens back. He just can't retreat them. He's already lost a lot of transfuses. He already hasn't done enough damage to the Terran units, and they're reinforcing faster than he can kill them. And this game is over. So guys, I definitely do think you can go a mass Queen defense. Don't focus on doing a Baneling drop though. You've got to have Banelings ready by about 5 minutes. When that count of Hellbats gets out of control, you need to constantly build Queens 3 at a time for quite a while, because you can't just say, oh, let's build another 8 Roaches. You've got to just keep building Queens and keep building Queens and keep building Queens. In both scenarios, what are we skipping? What are we cutting? No lair, no upgrades. This Evo chamber was dark. This is why the drop is so expensive. You built an Evo chamber, which he doesn't even want to get upgrades off, and a Dropper Lord and 4 Banelings. That's a lot of money, guys. So you just keep building Queens, you don't get upgrades, and you do not get a lair, and you stop at about 2 base saturation and 3 or 4 gas geysers with Roach Ravager. If you want to do Queenling Bane, you don't need much gas. So just 1 gas geyser is probably enough, but since you're going to have to make Banelings, and then you still want to actually get your lair sometime, you know, before 17 years later, you want to get a 2nd gas as well. So normally 2 gas, which means because you don't have that 3rd and 4th gas mining, and yet you can still have a similar work account, you can actually afford to have quite a few more drones on your 3rd base, as we see in this game from Dark. So you can actually get mining on your 3rd, whereas with the Roach Ravager defense, you do not get any mineral mining on your 3rd. You're very gas focused on your 2 base economy. All right, guys, so that's basically it. There's a lot of micro you can do back and forth. There's a lot of different ways these games do work out based on exactly how you play. Silly says Pig, so no +1 armor? Yeah, like I said, you can do that if you want. I'm not going over that now because I don't have any pro replays of anyone doing it. It's something I was doing for a lot of fun, going +1 carapace. And it was working out all right, but because you're spending a lot of money on it, I was probably like 60% like, nah, let's just build a shitload of queens and who cares about getting +1 armor. Because the thing is, you still need banelings to clear Hellbats. So it's like, yeah, your queens are already good against cyclones. Do you really need to make them that extra bit better? Probably not. So I think just going for more queens and having the banelings ready is completely fine as well. So it's up to you guys which method you prefer of defending. But yeah, the important thing is to really recognize how much of a commitment it is, and remember that you can't tech up. If you're going for a 3-base economy, that's your one advantage over the Terran doing that build. He's got no 3rd CC. He doesn't have upgrades. If you're just like, I've got a 3rd base, defend the push and then drone and then add upgrades and then add layer, you're going to be good. But because this is a fast moving attack, it's an attack which spirals out of control very quickly. If you don't have enough units initially, you will just get completely face stomped if you're not quite ready. So it's one of these attacks, especially when you're first getting used to it, just over preparing a little bit for it and then toning it back and starting to toe the line of greed where you kind of walk in between being too greedy and being too safe is where you want to head towards. So let's take a look. Any other questions from chat? Doesn't look like there are today, so I think we'll finish up the show there. And we will see how it goes. Okay, cool. Yeah, by the way, so just to close out that Zergling counterattack, this is the game where it did really well here. Oh, actually, don't worry, fuck it. It's okay. There's a billion different games. They played the same back and forth over and over, and it always was very similar sort of makeups until that game 5. But anyway, guys, thanks for hanging out. Hopefully that helps you if you die in a Hellion Cyclone. Figured we'd talk about that and actually do a daily for the first time in a couple of weeks. I'll be back tomorrow with another show, but for now, thanks for hanging out. Don't forget to hug a watermelon, kick a horse, and of course, punch a garden.